Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our mini series with Sarah Sturm during her first trimester of pregnancy. This is episode 2 of 5, and today we are diving into the mental and emotional side of first trimester body changes as an athlete. And we get into how it can feel when you see your body changing quickly, where early pregnancy weight gain is actually coming from, whether calorie intake needs to shift in the first trimester, and how hydration needs may change as well. If pregnancy has brought up body image challenges or questions around fueling, this is a really important conversation.
Yeah, how are you feeling? And last
Yeah.
time we checked in, you had your ultrasound after our check-in.
Oh,
Everything
yeah. Yes. Well, everything that we know, is great. So we know
awesome.
that the baby has a heartbeat.
Yay.
And it was crazy to like see that on a screen because to this point,
Yeah,
it's just sort of felt like a little alien invader and not so much like a baby. Well, it wasn't a
yeah,
baby, it was like an embryo. And now I think today I'm at 11 weeks. So it's officially a fetus.
like,
I would say my nausea and tiredness is like more stretched out. So I'll have a few more good
good.
days than bad ones. But yeah, I've been trying my best to update training peaks. And I was doing a really good job in chronometer.
No,
But
you're fine.
honestly, like my diet has not been fabulous. It's basically just been carbs and that's all that sounds good these
Yeah, yeah,
days.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to get as much protein as possible, but it's a lot. It's a lot of pasta and a lot of toast. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of sourdough toast. Mainly, it's been like those Goodles. Do you know that brand? They're like
No, is that
it's
a
like
macaroni or
chickpea.
something?
Well, I
Oh,
did take your advice, and I'm trying to do more chickpea
yeah.
pasta, so
Great.
that's been helpful. But yeah, they're basically easy mac and cheese, but they're chickpea
Yes. Yeah,
pasta.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like it does have like 17
Perfect.
grams of protein.
Yeah, and it should have a good amount of fiber too to help with, like,
Yeah,
any
and
constipation.
yeah, totally. And I tried the prunes,
Mm,
and actually I am less constipated for sure, which is nice.
good.
This is maybe TMI, but I had eating beets is helpful to see how slow
Yes.
your
Yes.
digestion is. Cause I'm like, oh my God,
Yes.
3 days later and my poop is still pink.
Oh,
Cause normally it's
yeah.
the next day and
Totally.
but like, yeah, my digestion just really it's because of the relaxin that is in the hormone. So it just
Mm.
relaxes everything and pretty much all the issues that you have as a pregnant person is hormones. And this
Yeah.
HCG hormone when you're in your first trimester is just so savage.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. So you're saying you have beets, they're not exiting your system until about 3 days later.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would say everything is like actually kind of tapering off in terms of
Mhm.
the bad, the, you know, that sort of stuff. So I can like poop once a day, which
So
is nice. Yeah,
yes.
the small wins.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. That's
but
great.
yeah, my riding it's hard to say because it's just been crappy weather here, and then when you feel shitty and it's crappy weather, you're like, I don't
Mhm.
really need to go ride. So
Yeah. Okay. I saw was it last week you got in some runs, some strength
yep,
sessions?
yeah,
That's
totally.
great.
hmm
All
Yeah,
right.
so I'm just doing my best here
Mhm.
with what I've got. But yeah, it's hard. And I had some blood work, but they see me at my doctor's office. And so they make you stand on the scale. And I was like, I don't want to know. And they're like, totally understand. And
Yeah.
then they like had me get on the scale and then they have you look over your information to make sure it's all correct. But then my weight was on there and I saw it and I was like,
Oh,
oh my God. Full disclosure, super fucking hard. Like,
yeah.
and I don't feel huge, but
Mhm.
I have more boobs than I've ever had in my life,
Yeah.
and I have hips. Like, I got
Mhm.
hips, and, like, that I was not expecting.
Yeah.
Like, my hips grew, but to be fair, I didn't have very much hip action before, so
Yeah.
but it's just
Yeah.
hard. My body is totally changing, and as someone who works pretty hard to, like, keep everything really consistent.
Eh, that is part of the process too. I mean, when you're talking about the digestion and bowel movement frequency, if food is staying in you for 2 days
Totally.
longer. There's that much more volume too going through the digestive tract that's still in the
Mhm.
body working its way through. But yeah, I think the hips, well, the hip bone literally have to move, and it is a fascinating thing. I do remember way back from my undergrad, they talked about, body composition, but
Yeah.
when the bodies change, which is, yes, obviously when you're pregnant, the body changes, but from a survival mechanism and a fat cell production, there's 2 points in a woman's life where the like number of fat cells in the body changes, and
Mhm.
it's puberty and pregnancy. And so your body will, like, because of the hormones and again, like survival for the baby and making sure you're
Right.
making breast milk and have enough fat stores to make breast milk to feed the baby. Like there are these times where the body will like potentially alter the like, I mean, like you're seeing like the hips and stuff, maybe like, I mean, the bones themselves are moving likely, but also like the adipose tissue around the body is doing that for a survival mechanism to make sure there's enough stores for the baby.
So, yeah, that's so crazy. And then I'm just so curious what goes back afterwards. Are you permanently changed or do things go back-ish to
So
normal?
yeah, everybody is different. There you absolutely can go back to like quote unquote normal. Typically, like when so the like with regards to adipose changes is like you're born with so many fat cells on your body when you're born.
Mhm.
And those fat cells can only max out to a certain size. So there, I should say there's one caveat to what I just said, which was puberty and
Right.
pregnancy. But if we max out all our existing fat cells, then that sends a signal to the body that needs to create more fat
More.
cells to accommodate more of the
Yeah.
body fat. And so once we have that many fat cells, usually the fat cells themselves don't go away, but they all can shrink back down in size.
Interesting.
The breastfeeding process, I have a couple clients right now that are actually post-pregnancy breastfeeding, and we're in this balance of making sure we're giving them enough nutrition, but they want to move back to a healthy body weight and all that stuff while they're starting to add in movement, but make sure that the breast milk supply is still present. And so
Yeah, because are they limiting caloric intake?
we are moving in a little bit, and so they're just keeping me looped in on their individual,
Sure.
like, I had
Yeah, it's
one
probably
of them
nuanced.
was one of them we were working through, and we had her, like, in the basically maintenance for breastfeeding. So that's an increased demand on top of your maintenance.
Mhm.
And then we have to allocate for movement. Like when you
Wow.
initially in the first several weeks, right, is like there's a lot of water. Your uterus is shrinking back down in
Totally.
size. There's all these other things that maybe aren't even necessarily body fat that your body is
Most of it actually isn't body fat is what I've learned. Like, a lot of
yeah,
it's, like,
it's like
blood
water and
volume
blood.
and
Hmm.
milk and breast
Yeah.
tissue and the baby, and, yeah, amniotic fluid is a ton
Yeah.
of weight.
Yeah, it's really amazing, like, it's not a lot of body fat, like, so we feel these things, but yeah,
Yeah,
you're like, I think there's some stat I remember hearing about, like, your blood volume, I think it doubles or triples or something like
totally.
that, and, I mean, that's in and of itself is wild, and, you're just producing all those more red blood cells, and
Right.
your body's busy. Usually, like, in the first trimester, we say there's not necessarily an increased energy demand to come in necessarily because the amount of energy being expended isn't that great. But then once we get into the second and third trimester, yes, then we want to start bumping up, and you're pretty much
Mhm.
there, right? So we want to think about that. But
Yeah, totally.
if you are feeling like super fatigued, and they should already be testing this, but certainly as an endurance athlete, really do make sure they're monitoring your iron levels because that's one of the big things. I mean, they do watch for like anemia during pregnancy, and then
Yeah.
because your body's trying to make so much more blood, but if it gets behind, that's when we can experience that. And certainly, yes, there's like a normal amount of fatigue that you will feel going through pregnancy, but if it's pretty extreme, or certainly you feel like more difficulty breathing, it's like, when I really am huffing and puffing trying to do this workout, that could be an iron thing. And
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, because I
yeah.
definitely, like, I would say I notice mostly my breathing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mm.
usually the heart has to work harder if there's not enough iron. So it has to pump the heart more because there's not enough oxygen on the red blood cell molecules because there's not enough red blood cell molecules to carry enough
Okay.
oxygen. So it has to work harder. Or if we are dehydrated, we will see more an
I
increase in heart rate?
I think the last couple weeks I've been pretty bad. It's weird. Water does not sound very good, and adding drink mix in has not been hitting
Yeah.
either. Like, and especially when I'm nauseous, the last thing I want to do is drink water. So I think I am a bit dehydrated for sure. And
Yeah.
we're trying to add in some more red meat this week for sure. Cause I was wondering about that. Like, and I don't eat, like, normally I don't eat a ton of red meat, but excuse me, we're sort of making the exception with pregnancy. How do people do this when they're vegan? Because, like, my friend
Yeah.
has had 2 children, and she's, like, strict like, has been vegan her whole life.
Yeah. You definitely have to be really, on it, like, even more so dialed, right? Because there's just essentially more opportunities to miss micronutrients because we're restricting entire food
Mhm.
groups. So, yeah, probably a consistent multivitamin would be my guess, and then they're you can get iron from plant-based sources. It's a different type of iron. They call it non-heme iron, and it's not
Hmm.
quite as bioavailable. So, like,
Oh,
spinach has some
interesting.
iron.
Yeah,
You can get some iron from chia seeds. Things like that will have bits of iron, but the amount of iron in it, the amount that we can convert to actual heme iron that we utilize, the conversion is just so much smaller than taking straight heme iron from an animal-based source and implementing it right into our
got it.
body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta
I
be a
would
little bit more
say, like,
careful.
my diet is pretty much in for breakfast, I'm either doing sourdough toast with, peanut butter and bananas, and then yogurt, like a yogurt chia berry bowl,
Mhm.
or, a smoothie with, like, a scoop of whey isolate and chia seeds and berries. So it's 2 of those 3 things. Like, usually I do toast with one of those things.
Great.
I just need to, like, start tracking again in Chronometer because it is actually helpful for me too to see which nutrients I'm missing.
That's yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, if we can get a couple days of journaling and just open our eyes
Totally.
to maybe where we might be missing the mark and then kind of try and implement that. If you are doing smoothies, I would say try and throw a handful of a leafy green in there if it's at
Yeah.
all appealing. So that could be like pre-cut up rinsed kale, it could be
Okay.
spinach. Any of those are easy, just a
Yeah,
handful. And
totally.
again, that'll give you some sources of iron, but it's also rich in calcium, which is one of the big things we want to make sure
Yeah.
we're also supporting the bone health. So I
Okay,
would give that a go too,
cool.
with that. But yeah, the breakfasts sound good. There's, healthy fats, proteins, carbs. Like, love that.
Yeah, pretty much just, like, I try to snack all day because I notice that I
Yeah.
feel better if I do just, like, small snacky meals throughout the
Mhm.
day, and it's sort of like some combination of cottage cheese with crackers or real cheese, and there actually has been quite a few pizza nights. I've been hitting the
Okay.
pizza extra
Yeah.
hard at night. It's weird. I would say some days I get, like, really bad morning sickness and really bad
Mm.
evening sickness.
Oh, shoot.
It's so annoying, like, yeah, so, like,
Mhm.
last night, we just had the Goodles, the mac and cheese for dinner because I was
Nice.
like, the thought of a steak last night, I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. I know the weight gain thing is gonna be tough. Oh, I wanted to ask you about this because, like, that sticker shock of seeing my weight, and I'm just curious if it's more common for athletes to gain more in their first trimester and then carry that through the pregnancy.
Yeah. So usually what we see is people who are leaner,
Mhm.
starting their like when they get pregnant, gain and it's safe to gain more weight than someone who starts off and maybe they're 40% body fat or something like that. Then the
Mhm.
weight that they gain throughout the pregnancy actually should be, from a health lens, should be much lower. So we do actually see that, like
Mhm.
that there is typically a little bit more gain, and it
Total
might be,
gain.
yeah, total
Great.
gain, yeah, because when you think of composition of the population of the world, right? If you're starting out way more lean than like Gen Pop, like getting
Mm,
pregnant, right? And so with that being
yeah.
said, like a lot of the science recommendations are not from athletes and athlete body
Right, right.
composition. They're from Gen Pop, and these individuals are already starting out at a much higher body fat percentage. I think a lot of it has to do, again, kind of like with the like primal state of it, is like the body probably wants to be at a comfort level with fat stores to be able to supply breast milk and energy stores to be able to make breast milk for the baby. So there's the higher survival rate, right? And so, and we don't
Gotcha.
want to go into postpartum and not be able to produce breast milk. I mean, well, depending on your personal
Yeah,
preference, of
sure.
course, but like from a primal lens, like the body is like designed to do that. And if we are too lean, kind of the same thing with like relative energy deficiency in sport, right? If we're too lean, we're not having a menstrual cycle. If we're too lean, we might not be able to make breast milk. We might not be able to make a healthy baby or be able to
Yeah, and, like,
provide
what
those
is
nutrients.
what is to and I wanna be so clear, very much understand, like, there's a greater good here, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna be real, like, it's a really hard part of pregnancy for, I think, most women in general, but certainly athletes, because we're like, my mentality has had to totally shift in the last
Hmm.
3 months. I went from
Yeah.
the full opposite end of the spectrum of
Hmm.
highly regimented performance-based nutrition only. And
Hmm.
and this is a different type of performance, but there are just some days that you don't even feel in control of your body. But I still know that I need to get nutrition in because one, I feel really terrible if I don't. And two, I
Yeah.
know I'm growing, a baby. So, but
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to find the balance. So trying to do it
Totally.
healthily,
Yeah.
where I feel better.
What I will say is any weight that comes on and from a composition lens, like it's for the health of the baby. And from an athlete lens, once the postpartum, all of that
Yeah.
stuff, like it can all be
I know.
from a diet and a movement, like it could
Totally,
all go back to
totally, and that's what, like,
like,
I'm like, "Okay, long game here is healthy pregnancy, healthy baby, healthy breastfeeding." If everything
mhm,
goes well, that healthy delivery, those are my goals, and I
yeah.
know that it's like 9 or 10 months really is a very short blip in time
Mhm.
in the long run, but
Yeah.
yeah, you start getting in your head and you're like, "Oh my god, all I'm craving is a cheesy Texas taco
Yeah.
from Sirius, Texas." And I have done 0 activity today, but you're like,
Yeah.
"I guess this is the time that I do that?"
Yes. Yeah. I mean, from what you're eating and what you're craving, it does sound like to me there's a lot of things that are very high sodium. And so when we think about
Yeah.
your body's trying to make so much more blood volume and it's to keep your blood volume up and keep water in the blood, we need sodium and we need glucose to keep that blood plasma volume elevated, right? If the body is like eating these very salty things, it might be
Mhm.
because it's trying to increase that blood volume and pull more water into the blood. So yeah,
Oh,
trying to
dang.
stay on top of that hydration might
So
help that a little bit.
yeah, how much should I be drinking a day?
But do you feel like you're sweating much when you are training?
Mm-mm. And I did get that little thing that you sent me.
Oh, the H drop came?
Yes.
The sweat test? Oh, awesome. Okay. So I have my
Awesome.
sample in here. Um,
Yeah.
So with this is monitoring hydration status and sodium loss on a
Ooh,
longer term scale. So if you are doing a longer session, this is something we could use as a tool to see. It
cool.
would be very interesting to use this now and then post pregnancy
Yeah, I
to
mean, I
see.
actually, since today is so cold out, I actually and I'm not feeling like I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I do a little trainer workout today.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is a calibration test that I recommend you do first. But
Okay,
what it looks like, it's like if you didn't open the box yet, it's
I
this like little
haven't.
guy.
Oh, cool.
Um, and this is the sensor on the back, and then they give you like this armband strap to
Awesome.
wear. Some athletes wear them on their heart rate monitor too, like along their back. They have different calculations based off of the sweat rate on different areas, like commonly of people's bodies. And then that's how they interpret the calculation, like based off how
Cool.
it's coming out. So what I will say is any data is good data. And then we will know, okay, you ran and it was 12 degrees. It's still helpful to know how much you might be losing. And oftentimes we actually are losing more than we realize when it's
Mm,
cold. And we do have quite a fluid demand actually in the dry, like at altitude environments. So
right.
yeah. So any data is good data. I'd say like at a minimum, we would want to drink. The minimum for non-pregnant is half your body weight in ounces would be like the bare minimum.
Okay.
But if you're starting to sweat, we certainly want to be above that. And then with the amount of blood volume your body's trying to produce, probably want to be slightly above that. Um,
Yeah.
and typically we say like with fluid goals for the day, it can account for any fluids.
Hmm.
So if you're drinking a cup of decaf coffee, Well,
Oh,
that
okay.
counts as
Oh,
fluids. If you're
interesting.
having a
Okay.
tea, if you put almond milk in your smoothie, that counts as fluids.
Minimum, you wanna hit half of your body weight, and then if you're doing
Yeah,
any activity, then that
yeah,
obviously changes that. See, and
and
that's what,
yeah, and
like,
you'll
is hard for me because 'cause I'm like, yeah, some days I'm not active at all, but, like, today, like, I went to weights this morning, and I actually did sweat quite a bit.
nice. Yeah,
So I'm like, "Okay, I need to drink half my body weight times 2."
yeah.
So my
So
body
what
weight
I would do, yeah. So the recommendation is half your body weight in ounces per day minimum, up to 1 ounce per pound of body weight per day. So that's can be a big range.
Oh,
And then you layer on fluid loss from exercise on top of that. So, what I would do, like you can wear the H drop. The coolest thing about the H drop is that you can wear it as many times as you want in all the
right.
scenarios. The battery lasts a long time. You don't need to have your phone right there. Like it works in low internets, like low
Hmm.
Wi-Fi cell signal settings, and then
Cool.
can
So I
upload
could
it.
wear
Like
it to, like, my strength
you
class
could
and
wear it to
see.
strength. Yeah. And
Hmm.
see, and it'll tell you, like, it'll say, like, you lost 24 ounces of fluid, right? And so then you know, like, okay, I have my baseline. Then I'm going to consume an additional 24 ounces on top of that today to stay hydrated. Of course, you can also always look at urine color. And then,
Yeah,
and like, how many times are you peeing? Do you
yeah,
feel like you're peeing a lot yet?
I
Or
am. Yes,
you are?
that was very apparent on my travels.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, I can just imagine when I think about an athlete to prepping for a race trying to do a hyperhydration protocol,
Mhm.
there can be like a 5 pound gain just from water weight. And so, I mean, your body's like producing so much blood volume.
Right.
And the fact you're craving sodium, again, I think just says your body's really trying to keep that blood volume up.
Yeah, interesting. I think you're so right. Like, I pretty much don't crave sweets at all,
Mhm.
and it's pretty much just been salty. So,
Yeah.
I wonder yeah, I wonder how much of that I just am needing. Like, if it's trying to get my blood volume up, does that mean that I'm just dehydrated?
Yeah, it could mean
Or
that your
that's
blood
just what my
volume
body is doing?
is low and or your body's trying to build it up. So maybe it's
Mm,
like this is what it is for Sarah normally, but
mhm.
Sarah pregnant, we gotta quadruple this or whatever it is. So,
Right.
but it'd be interesting to see your sweat sodium losses with the age drop too, because if you're losing a lot more salt now too,
Mhm.
then your body certainly needs to replace that.
Hmm.
So yeah, that would make sense and give you an idea of where we want to be with that.
I seem to be doing just fine on getting sodium in my diet. Like, I haven't really been hitting electrolytes in my water. Is that something like, if I go on a ride, I'll do a bottle with electrolytes, but it's
Mhm.
honestly been so cold that I am not drinking that much water on my rides. I just
Yeah,
try to drink a lot before.
yeah. It sounds to me like your body's making up for any sodium that you're not getting on a ride by craving salty stuff. So you might not need it. And especially if the sessions are, sub 2 hours and it's pretty cold and maybe the intensity is not super high,
Yeah.
you likely don't need a whole lot of electrolytes in there.
I hope to, like, start feeling better more consistently.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I can't really tell, like, if like my activity level actually affects my fatigue the next day, or if it's just like
Mm,
hormonal,
right.
if that makes
Yeah, all the
sense.
hormones bouncing around. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the different demands and stages of the pregnancy. I mean, the hormones are kind of like all over the place. It is an interesting area, right? Because you think about hormones when you're having a natural menstrual cycle.
Mhm.
And in most women in that high hormone phase, the same workout that they could have done 2 weeks prior in their low hormone phase, the fatigue feels greater
Right.
when the hormones are elevated. So,
Yeah, that's such a good
yeah.
point. I would say the best way that I can explain first trimester is if you're hungover in your luteal phase for 3 months. That's what it feels like. Like a
Oh,
hungover
no.
luteal. Yeah,
Yeah,
so anyone
that
who's
is rough.
listening who wants to get
Yeah,
pregnant, just think about
yeah.
that before you take your IUD out.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Yeah, the luteal phase itself already is you're all emotional, you're not
Oh,
sleeping
it's
great,
so
and
brutal. It's so
yeah.
brutal.
Oh, man.
Like, it's a
Yeah.
different type of toughness that I saw someone talking about this. They're like, "You can't out discipline your pregnancy." I think that's really valid and so true. and such a different mentality than being an athlete, because like we push through a lot, to
Yeah.
a fault too, right? Like some
Mhm.
athletes, like myself included, like I struggle with like you're not actually moving the needle if you're like not rested and
Right.
whatever, not
Yeah.
recovered. Like you can't just like suffer everything out. And
Mhm.
certainly in pregnancy, like you kind of just don't have control.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you don't. Your body's changing. It's going. It's like
Totally.
the
That's why I'm like,
the
it feels more like an
clock has
alien
started.
invader than a child. It's like
So
literally
yeah.
like leaching calcium from my body if I don't eat enough of it, which
Yeah.
I'm like, I think I have been because I do eat a lot of yogurt and cottage cheese and dairy. From the moment you find out you're pregnant, and probably for a lot before that, you feel different. You are totally
Mhm.
different. Your life is totally different. Day to day, right now, even though nothing is happening, my life is totally, totally different. And I think for a lot, like especially like with athletes, like there's a big identity piece that you are mourning and like losing and it's changing, like and
Mhm.
I think if anyone tries to tell you like, "Oh, but it's so beautiful." It's like it is, but it doesn't replace the fact that like you are and both parents,
Yeah.
not just the mother, but like you're sacrificing everything that you have been and are and have
Right.
created to that point for a new creation and a new project. It's just a massive
Yeah.
change. And in some ways, I'm like, 10 months isn't enough time to like deal with that before. I'm sure so many of your clients can relate to this, but yeah, your life has always been focused so much on me and what's going
Yeah.
on with my body and my performance. And especially with me and Dylan, it's how we earn our money. And now it's such a different focus all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like you pee on the little
Mm.
stick and you're like, everything's different and you don't even know.
That moment. Yeah. That is wild. Yeah, it's a lot. That is a lot to process and change. You're
Gaining
already
information
doing
is
great.
good. Like,
Yes,
I think
exactly.
nutrition is such a huge part because it is something that you actually, to a certain extent, you can control it. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it's okay. I haven't really eaten fast food, but I have not been eating as healthy. So sometimes your cravings, you're just like, I need this one thing, and you just
Yeah.
have to get the thing. But
Yeah.
I would say, like, it is nice to, like, feel like you're getting the nutrients that your body needs, that the baby needs, and, like, it's, like, the thing that you can control, which is kinda nice,
Totally.
and setting
Yeah,
yourself up.
for sure. All of this is gonna result in, like, healthy nutrient availability for the baby, all of
Different
that good
mind
stuff, so
shift, for sure.
yeah. Yeah. And then so we'll do some journaling to see where we're
Yes.
at. I wanna get a feel too of, like, how does that level of intake feel for you? Do
Okay.
you feel hungry? Are you really full? Are you feeling
Okay.
burpy? And then we can also dive into micronutrients, but we can kind of start to determine if we want to start increasing these going into the second trimester, or can we hold and wait till the third trimester? And then definitely send me the ferritin levels.
Yeah.
So the ferritin, we'll have to check on it for pregnancy, but they I think it's the Endocrinology Society just changed the cutoff for the minimum of ferritin. So before, I think the cutoff was, I want to say it was like 10 or 15, which is very low if you're an athlete. Like you are certainly having compromised performance if your ferritin is. And so literature for endurance athletes will say ferritin minimum 60. So during pregnancy, and I think the cutoff just got changed to a minimum of 40 by the Endocrinology Society, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, to go from 10 to 40 because we were realizing so many people were close to anemia or not feeling good, obviously, when their levels were that low.
Yeah. So 60 is the
So
minimum.
for an athlete, and let's see. Okay, so they're saying anything above 30, which I'd say anything above 40 because the levels just got changed. Uh,
Yeah.
70 to 100 for optimal range.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you take it easy,
Thanks,
get those
Kyla.
fluids in. Let me know if you have any questions about the H drop stuff.
Okay.
And then, yeah, curious to hear how that all
Yeah.
goes.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
I'll be in
All
touch.
right. Bye, Sarah.
Yeah.